This is Kerusi Panas, episode 11, the series that looks at hot seats across Malaysia in the coming state elections that will be held just a few days from now on August 12th. I'm Bridget Welsh. I've gotten in a plane from Penang, flown back to Kuala Lumpur, and then got up in the wee hours of the morning to head to the beautiful capital of Kota Lama in the heart of Kelantan. A friend of mine asked me, "Why are you going to Kelantan?" The result is well known. PAS will win. And yes, I agree, PAS will win in this state, and it will win overwhelmingly. But for me, every state in this election is important. And in each state, there are hot seats, and those stories need to be told to understand the complexities and the variations of what's happening in Malaysian politics. In looking at the politics of Kelantan and this state elections, I first want to comment that in understanding the politics, one has to recognize that the dynamics in Kelantan are very much like they used to be in Johor, in that the politics are within the party as opposed to against other parties. So understanding politics in Kelantan is to understand the leadership battle, the differences between factions, which were recently in the news when some candidates were dropped in places like Pengkala Chapa, as well as generation shifts. There is the sense that the politics of PAS from outside is this one big green machine. And let's not underestimate this machine. But at the same juncture, one has to recognize that within PAS, there's lots of competition and there are lots of politics. But the green machine has become very powerful. They've been in power in this state for 33 years since 1990. This is a long time. The roots of the green machine extend deep into the society, into the business community, into the patronage patterns, and into the control of most of the local institutions. In my first episode in this series, I focused on Kelantan. And in particular, I was asking the question, where would UMNO win? UMNO is facing fierce battles. But those battles have been long-term as well, as the leadership has wrestled with infighting, as well as the challenge of facing the green machine. It's never been able to get traction, even though it's had some very prominent leaders. And as a result of not rejuvenating, it still faces the challenge of fighting the green machine of PAS. But the other question is also a fascinating one, and that question is, why has Pakatan Harapan never gained traction here either? In 2018, when the wave of change happened across Malaysia and the rest of Malaysia, that wave never reached the shores of the east coast of Terengganu and Kelantan. What is it about Pakatan Harapan in Kelantan that prevented it from gaining traction? Is it that the machine and the inroads and the controls of different social institutions are so deep that it's very difficult to challenge it? Or is it that there is a disconnect between the politics of Pakatan Harapan and people in the local community? Kota Lama, the seat that I've chosen for this particular episode, right in the heart of Kota Lama, provides a very interesting lens to look at these sets of questions of power, regeneration, as well as the constraints and challenges that the opposition face. This seat has 4 candidates. The first of which is a man called Zamri bin Ismail. He's a former civil servant who worked as the director of the Minerals Office, or PTG. He's 62. He's long had a very close relationship with PAS, and now has moved from civil service to entering formally politics. He's the former manager of the Kelantan United Football Club, so he's very well known, especially among sports fans. He has the support of the PAS party behind him, which in this particular area is quite important. This seat was held by Anwar Tan Abdullah since 1999. And Anwar Tan, a Chinese Muslim, had significant popularity in this area, 5 terms. But what's happened is that they finally decided that the time was to regenerate and to provide a different candidate. And also over time, Anwar's Tan majority in this seat became smaller. This opens up the way for an alternative candidate. And Pakatan Harapan fought very hard among themselves for who would contest in Kota Lama. And Amana was given that chance because they had contested before in this area. The candidate Amana has chosen is a woman called Dr. Hafisa bin Haji Mustaqim. She's also older at the age of 60. She is a medical doctor and has run a local clinic. And in 2015, she was awarded a prize for promoting issues in the community by women and one of the most important figures of Kelantan women from the state government. Earlier on, before she was in Amana, she was in PAS. She's also participated in the Women's Consultative Council. She's been a very active member of the leadership of IKRAM, which is an Islamic NGO that focuses on community work and education. Dr. Hafisa faces a very tough struggle. She's one of only a handful of women being fielded in Kelantan, and she's facing someone who has significant backing in a place where they've won for many decades. There are two other candidates. There's an independent candidate, Isat Bukhari bin Ismail Bukhari at 57. What Isat would be most famous for is how many times he's lost running for office, but he has been the perennial candidate. He's contested already 6 times, 2 in general elections and 4 in state governments. So he's coming back. He's a former lecturer in the field of architecture, and he's determined to try to offer different insights into town planning and to work and to shift and change the issues at the municipal level. Also contesting is a man called Andy Tan, or Tan Boon Kian. He is also older at 56. He's representing Parti Rakyat Malaysia. He is a businessman. He's also contested before in GE15. And he is also interested in promoting issues associated with the economy. So these 4 candidates are competing in what is considered to be one of the most competitive seats in Kelantan. The seat comprises almost 2/3 Malay at 65%, and the rest of the third is Chinese. There's only, of that remaining third, there's only 1% that are Indian. So this issue of the Chinese vote, as well as divisions within the Malay community, have all made this particular seat quite interesting. When this seat was first created in 1995, it was first contested by the MCA, which won it then, and of course lost it, as I mentioned earlier, in 1999. But the MCA in the Barisan Nasional has continued to be quite powerful, and there was some considerable disgruntlement, not only within Pakatan Harapan partners, but also from the MCA of not being allowed to contest in this particular seat. In GE15 results, we can see that the BN won 19% of the vote, which is not insignificant. PAS won 42% and Pakatan Harapan won 38% in terms of how the vote split. So the majority was almost only 1,000. So that gives you a sense of how close it is from the numbers. We see a situation where, if we look at ethnic voting patterns, PAS wins the majority of the Malays, but in some ways it doesn't win all of them. We can see that Pakatan Harapan won 16% of the Malays, and Barisan Nasional also won 22% of the Malays. So we're talking about almost 40% of the Malay community that's voted elsewhere. So looking at this splits and division of the Malay vote, plus the Chinese vote, which disproportionately goes to Pakatan Harapan, this seat becomes very interesting and very competitive from an ethnic voting perspective. It is competitive, but there are very interesting sets of issues. The first of which builds on what I said earlier about the MCA. Will the MCA support move towards Pakatan Harapan? And disproportionately, most of the support for the MCA came from the Malay community, people who support UMNO. So what we're really talking about is whether or not UMNO support will move to Pakatan Harapan, to this female candidate. A second factor is that she is a woman. And we all know in politics that women have to be much higher in terms of qualifications and much higher in terms of expectations in order to even be fielded. Pakatan Harapan has fielded the most women in this state, 6, while PAS has only fielded 2. Of these seats in the state, Dr. Hafiza stands the best chance to win from Pakatan Harapan. But she faces a lot of obstacles. First of all, she's originally from Johor, and despite being in Kelantan and being married to a Kelantanese, there is some resistance among locals, and this issue has been used against her, saying that she's not really from Kelantan, when in fact, how long do you have to be in this place with children from this place to be from the place? She also faces challenges because many in the business community feel that it's necessary to have a man to be able to navigate the state assembly. This discrimination is very real in terms of people's thinking. At the same time, Dr. Hafiza represents perhaps one of the few chances of providing alternative representation for women. What we're seeing in Malaysia has been a reduction of the number of women candidates in this particular state election, and a reduction in their chances of winning, which really creates challenges given the issues of inclusion that are actually very much and very prominent in this campaign nationally. Along with the fact that she is a woman, the other issue that's being touted on the campaign is that she comes from IKRAM. Now, IKRAM is a Muslim NGO, but it doesn't have the same values that many of those who support PAS do. And here's something very important to understand, is that the debate among Muslim organizations and among Muslim scholars is robust in Malaysia. The variation among them and how they articulate and their interpretations of the faith. And these issues are being challenged by the PAS Green machine here in Kelantan. They see her political positions at IKRAM as antithetical to the interpretations of many of the religious scholars in the PAS government. And the PAS government has significant resources at its disposal. Unlike Terengganu, which Kelantan hasn't had the same level of distribution and resources and others, what it has, however, is ties to being in incumbent power for such a long time. It knows where to mobilize. It can identify who are the fence-sitters. Where they face some challenges is among the more educated civil servants and business people, and also among Chinese voters. Party workers I spoke to this morning highlighted the fact that the Chinese vote seems to be very much in her favor. But the question, however, remains one of turnout, of whether or not Chinese voters will return back. And in Kelantan, turnout levels are low because voting is seen as having less impact in changing the results. Although in a seat like Kota Lama, it will actually significantly impact the results. And while the PAS machine might suggest that Dr. Hafiza being a woman would actually work to her disadvantage, one has to remember, when we look at Kelantan and Kelantan history, women are extremely powerful in Kelantanese society. Women are active entrepreneurs and in business. There is an entrepreneurial culture. And also, some of the most important legends in Malay folklore come from Kelantan. One I was reminded of here this morning when I had tea is about Che Siti Wan Kembang, who ruled Kelantan in the 17th century. She was known as a warrior queen, engaged on horseback and fighting off enemies. And in particular, she was seen to have mystical powers. She adopted the daughter of Raja Abdullah, and that daughter, Putri Sadong, became another ruler in Kelantan. Siti Wan Kembang's deer was known and put on the coins that have been identified historically with Kelantan. The power of women and the importance of women in Kelantan society is quite significant. But what we're seeing among voters for PAS and for PN is they're not necessarily supporting for women. They're supporting access to the issues that women care about, be it healthcare, be it access to economic support and other factors in terms of protecting and helping to support the family. What might end up deciding Kota Lama are younger voters. And here, PAS still has the advantage. winning the majority of those in GE15, but only just. In my repeated visits to prepare for the series and to learn about the elections to Kelantan, I had many conversations with young voters. They talk about the need to have choice, and they feel that there aren't the choices available to them. And here is a bit of irony, that Pakatan Harapan is given a very talented professional woman to be a candidate, someone who offers different thinking and has a record of long service to the community. And she faces a significant struggle to win the seat because of the power of the green machine that provides resources, networks, ties into the religious community, and paints others as outsiders as opposed to those who are part of the community as well. What we've seen in Kelantan is that the opposition, UMNO or Pakatan Harapan, really wrestles with trying to gain ground, and they will wrestle very hard this election. In Kota Lama, Dr. Hafiza has a chance, but it will depend on how many voters come back to support her and whether or not she manages to win over women and young people. But for now, the politics of Kelantan will still be that of those inside PAS. We should watch what happens with the factions and whether or not there is going to be a leadership change at the state. These changes in PAS happen slowly because they have confidence that they will be here for some time. Thank you so much for joining me in Kerusi Panas as I head south in the East Coast for my next episode.